Hey, happy New Year, everyone. It's that time of year again. Yep, New Year's resolution time once again. So I have a question for you. Do you set those big goals and they're so huge that you end up setting yourself up for failure? Or would you say that you're one that sets small goals, also known as SMART goals, and you set yourself up for success? Well, I have Janice Vitale here with me today to help you decide what strategy might work best for you. And hey, if you find this video informative, be sure to give us a like or subscribe. We really want to hear from you. I really want to dig into this topic about New Year's resolutions and why only 10% or less actually come to fruition at the end of the year that those resolutions are made. So Janice, thank you so much for doing this with us. We're so excited, first of all.
I really appreciate the opportunity to do this. It's really, really interesting, and I can't wait to, talk further.
When people come to you and they start working with you from a therapy perspective and also from a financial perspective, there's a process that you go through, right? And yet at the beginning of the year, people just say, I've got this big goal, but there's no process a lot of times, right? So talk a little bit about the therapy behind that and the psychology behind that.
Agreed. So oftentimes people will just say, I want to feel differently. Usually it's some kind of feeling that they don't like and they want to feel differently, but they don't have, specific goals in mind. So what is really effective in changing how you feel or changing things about your life is having specific goals. And as you were mentioning earlier, that my personal belief is that having these New Year's resolutions can be a setup for failure, basically, because by the time this has aired, by the time you've shared this with people on your mailing list, and most likely there's going to be people that started, okay, January 1st, I'm going to, set my New Year's resolution, and they've already stopped doing it for a variety of reasons. Mm-hmm. So I think that just this notion that we're going to start something on January 1st and everything's going to be better. It's a setup. So if you have already stopped doing your New Year's resolution, congratulations, you're right on track, totally normal.
So what can they do, what can we do, first of all, in our goal setting, our realistic goal setting? And secondly, what are some of the things that do make that 10% successful?
So the 10% that are successful, I am guessing they have incredible willpower, more willpower than I have, So one of the first things that I think is really important when setting a goal, that it needs to be something that's achievable, that it's like a reasonable goal. So I'm going to give an example of how not to set a goal. A friend of mine, Erica, and I, a couple of years ago, we were commiserating about feeling like couch potatoes and being a little overweight. And we both came up with this idea, we should run a half marathon. And I was all excited on day one. And I went to the local gym and I signed up and I paid for 3 months. And I went to the gym exactly 2 times. And then I failed. Well, I shouldn't say I failed. I ceased going to the too big of a goal for me. It was too big. And so what I really recommend is having smaller goals. So if I want to start running, perhaps like if I'm totally a couch potato, maybe I start with walking and jogging together for 15 minutes. Something like that, but making them small and achievable. So, and a good example of this is the movie Brittany Runs a Marathon. She wants to lose weight. She makes a lot of changes in her life because her lifestyle isn't very healthy. She decides she wants to run, and her first task, I believe, was running around the block. From there, she comes up with the idea of running a marathon, and she does, but she sets smaller goals for herself. I'm going to first run a mile, and then 2 miles, and then I'm going to run a 5K. Those are the kind of goals that you want to set for yourself.
And I think when we were prepping for this discussion, one of the things that you and I talked about too was it doesn't have to be perfect.
Correct. Yeah. So the idea that, people come up with these goals like having a more healthy lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And so they're like, I'm going to, eat 10 fruits and vegetables, servings of fruits and vegetables every day, and I'm never going to like cheat and things like that, or I'm going to exercise every single day. In my opinion, having goals like that, it is another setup, because invariably something's going to happen. Either your child is homesick, or you've got a migraine, or work is extremely stressful and you just don't have the energy to, cook the vegetables or to go and exercise. So what I would recommend is setting goals that are more life friendly. So, having a goal that says something like, on 80% of the days, I'm going to, eat a certain number of servings of fruits and vegetables, or on most days I'm going to eat this quantity of fruits and vegetables. On most days I'm going to exercise for 15 to 30 minutes. And that way, when your day comes where you have a migraine or whatever's going on and you decide, I just don't have it in me to do whatever the goal is, you haven't failed.
Yeah, and the more I thought about that conversation that we had, one of the things that came to mind was the diet starts tomorrow syndrome. It's like, oh, I blew it today, so I might as well restart the diet tomorrow. And that happens over and over and over again. And there is a true emotional downturn that you take when you kind of keep having that same sort of failure thought, right? Or I'll do it tomorrow, I failed today, or, I blew it today, I'll start tomorrow. And tomorrow never actually quite gets there. Right? Whereas if, all right, you know what, I totally ate crappy at that party and I enjoyed it. Right. And that's okay. And tomorrow I'm going to be fine, but it could either continue to hop on that bandwagon of I totally blew it and really blow it, or I can say, you know what, that was a cheat day. So what? And 90% of the time I'm eating great, so I'm gonna celebrate in that success.
Exactly. And I know about this professionally, but also personally, because I've been on that yo-yo dieting, where you're going from one extreme to the other, or I need to be perfect, versus I'm eating everything that's horrible. And there's a lot of middle ground between those two opposites. And I think when we spend too much time on one of the polar opposites, if we're, I have to be perfect, and as soon as you're not perfect, you're just bam, you're going to go to the other side. And it's only been recently where I finally have figured that out for myself, that it's this moderation that is the sweet spot.
It's interesting because you said where I finally figured it out for myself, and it's the same concept. And you and I have talked about this in the past, where I've said, financial planners need financial planners and therapists need therapists, because when we're in our own head, we need that outside presence to actually guide us through a particular issue that we're dealing with. And whether it's weight, or whether it's finances, or whether it's relationships, no matter what it is, that person that's sitting on the outside looking in at the situation has a very different view of what is going on in our little heads, right?
And when you and I have talked, I go to my own therapist, and I work on personal development things, but I totally agree that having an outside person to have that different perspective, because I can't therapize myself. It doesn't work.
We can talk through our own, when we've given the tools to talk through our own coping mechanisms, we can do that in the situation that we're in. But it is difficult when the emotion gets in our own way. And, sometimes I'll tell myself, get out of your way, Amy, get out of your own way, get out of your own way. And I have to repeat it until I actually get out of my own way, or somebody rips me out of my way.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So the therapy or the psychology behind what you're talking about, and again, there's a lot of times, at least in my experience, when people want a change, they're also afraid of the change. And they might not always know that they're afraid of the change, but there's an underlying fear, right, that kind of exists sometimes. And for example, somebody coming into my office or into your office, they've made that decision that they want a financial planner. They've made that decision that they want a therapist. And yet when they sit down to actually, you can just see that fear exists. And, I try to take the emotion out of it, or used to try to take the emotion out of it. Now I embrace that emotion and ask the questions about, what brings you here? What's your biggest fear? And when people feel like they've been given the open door to express that. I've heard a lot of things over the years. I'm sure you have too. What do you see as a therapist? What would one tip be, I guess, in this particular session that we're recording, that would help people get over that hurdle and get in front of people like you and me?
Well, one thing I could say is that invariably when somebody comes to counseling for the first time, sometimes people, like, they've never been in counseling their whole life. They could be 60, 70, 80 years old and never had done it. So they have a lot of preconceived notions about what therapists might be like or what counseling is like. And invariably though, when they sit with me, they're like, oh, like this was really nice, because basically it's just like, usually therapists are kind, open, caring people, and it's just somebody who thinks about helping people all the time and has tons of experience and tons of training, and they're just focused on you to hear you. And sometimes just being heard and seen by another person is enormously healing.
And not judged.
Yes. Yeah, because if you've gone through something or you're feeling a certain way, somebody else in the world has too. You are not alone. I can totally promise you that.
And I always say no situation is the same, but there are solutions to help you through.
Absolutely.
And so that's what I think people like you and me can bring to the table. And I am so thankful that you have taken today out of your busy schedule to share these concepts with people and to give them some ideas on some action steps they can take to start 2020, our new decade, our new year, off with some thoughts. As I mentioned earlier, we are thrilled to have Janice, participating in these video blogs with us. And next month, we are going to be talking about relationships. And I always say, if you want to see a couple start to fight, talk about relationships and money, and the two will, there you go, there will be an argument. So it'll be exciting for us to explore that particular topic. If you are interested in contacting Janice, we will flash her information on this video at the very end in the trails. And we encourage you to give her a call, try her out, if she can help you with whatever situations you have going on. We are strong believers that money and emotion are very tied together. And that is, again, why we're doing this series. And we look forward to you all chiming in and giving us feedback going forward.